Welcome back, everybody. Look, the absolute storm of games is once again crashing upon us. The best that we can do is try to hang on and at least try to play some of the games, because there are so many and we've had such a high quality of games. This month we've got massive AAAs like, of course, Spider-Man 2. We've got smaller AAAs like Assassin's Creed Mirage. We've got creepy games from small indies all the way up to very, very anticipated games like Alan Wake 2, which I'm personally very excited about, plus a real strong selection of strategy games as this year's renaissance for that genre continues unabated. Of course, tell me what you're excited about down in the comments. With that said, though, let's jump in. The first week of October has been comparatively quiet, though, because nobody really wants to get in the way of Assassin's Creed Mirage, which right now is out. It's their take on the classic Assassin's Creed formula that's returning to the Middle Eastern setting of course, the first game. Launched on October 5th, and it's basically promising a different experience to the humongous, massive open-world RPGs of Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. Now, allegedly, this was basically bumped up from a Valhalla DLC to a standalone title, which is hardly surprising because you are playing as Basim, who's a character that was in Valhalla. It basically charts his training as an assassin in Baghdad, which is awesome. Far more about assassination, stealth, parkour, all those things are back. And essentially, from what I've been able to glean so far, right, in terms of its scope and scale, for a lot of people, that is something that is super welcome. However, it does commit what I believe is one of the modern sins of video games, which is having the start of your story, the end of your story, and then a whole bunch of it that you can do in absolutely any order, which basically guarantees that you can't really have that just well-paced narrative. From what I can tell, it still isn't the perfect return to form in terms of combat, and some of that for some people, but some of the stealth and assassination missions are actually really, really damn good. The actual gameplay seems to be the stronger element, at least if you want that assassin fantasy. The plot, though, some people are really happy. To a lot, though, it is a bit more flat. Now, in spite of it being a massive release, Harebrained Schemes have released the Lamplighters League. I think this is one that slipped under a lot of people's radars. It came out on the 3rd. Basically, right, you're thinking about, XCOM, right, being sort of the pulpy sci-fi thing. Lamplighters is more 30s, 40s pulp, as players basically try to stop a cult from taking over the world. Now, this is built by the people who made the Shadowrun trilogy, right? So there is actually a serious amount of talent on offer here. It's basically twist, though, is that you're not the heroes. You're basically the dregs left over after the heroes failed. It's blending in story, tactics, and stealth gameplay, which is very much in the wheelhouse of this development team. So that's all pretty neat, and joining it actually is a port of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, making it to Steam exactly 3 years after it launched on the Epic Games Store. Yeah, that is bizarre, but hey, as a game, it's fantastic. Now, the 4th saw the release on Xbox of Warhammer 40k Darktide. Yep, that game has come to console now after being, of course, on Game Pass for PC, and with a year worth of fixes and a big incoming structural rework, just on skills, progression, so much. I'll definitely be getting into that in detail once we know a little more. On to the video game that we made. It's actually coming out on Switch. Yes, the 6th of October. So, of course, if you're playing in PC, you can check us out on Steam. But if you'd like to pick up the game on Switch, that is now something you can do over on the Nintendo eShop. So, yeah, I don't know, pretty damn cool. We actually just passed 1,000 reviews on Steam, which is pretty dope. Yeah, you can pick up the game that way. Okay, moving on to the 10th, though, Overwatch will be trying to push their community uphill as Season 7 releases. So, will a season where you do not have to pay extra for more single-player content, generate more sympathy? How will it go? I don't know. We'll find out. It's always fun to kind of check back in the shit show. Moving on to the 2nd week of October, there's a lot happening. So, Total War Pharoah is coming out on the 11th, and it appears to be another one of the smaller scale games from Creative Assembly. So, scope-wise, to me, it very much looks like Troy. The thing is, though, they're not calling this a saga title. They kind of are positioning it as a full historical Total War title. Kind of hard to say. That being said, with it limiting the action to the Mediterranean basin, right, at the time of, the Bronze Age collapse, I mean, come on, the Sea Peoples. If you are interested in parts of history that I am, anyone will say, hey, Sea Peoples, and you'll just get really excited. So I definitely am excited. I'm cautiously excited. I really want to jump in and see, because the era is one that I love, and looking at some of what they're doing with their battle systems, with like weather, rain, sandstorms, the ground itself becoming muddy or shifting beneath your feet, there are interesting things there. That being said, it inherently isn't going to have the kind of grand level of excitement that something like, say, I don't know, Medieval 3, because that would make people very excited. If you want to print all the money with a large historical title, I'll take a Medieval 3, please. That being said, that would be something from their core studios, whereas this is from their Sophia studio, I believe. Next, then, we have some Eastern and Western sci-fi, because Honkai Star Rail is coming out on PlayStation on the 11th. I'm not sure how the Post-Scarcity Federation would cope with all of the gacha that exists in Hoyoverse games. But, of course, it's Honkai Star Rail. It has been an absolutely massive draw on phones and PC. Now it's there for the console players. And then, while the strength of Star Trek Infinite on the 12th is more coming from their basis in Stellaris' fantastic galaxy civilization modeling, Nimble Giant Entertainment basically started development, right, of this new Star Trek game by forking off from Stellaris a few years back. So essentially from that basis, Infinite has been heavily built to allow for a specifically Star Trek experience. You'll be able to play as the major species from that franchise just before the next generation begins, and basically write your own narrative from there. You've got the Stellaris sandbox galaxy gameplay combined with a more structured campaign. To be honest, that seems like something that, as a licensed Star Trek title, could really make a lot of people happy. Next, then, Lords of the Fallen. Yeah, this could be a sort of double-A dark horse for the year when it comes out on the 13th. This is essentially a remake and sequel to 2014's Lords of the Fallen. It's from Hexworks, and yeah, it's another Souls-like. Basically, you know the deal. Very large bosses, gothic fantasy visual direction, action-based combat. There is a bit of a twist though, because supposedly this one is 5 times bigger than the first one and has got full drop-in, drop-out co-op. But the biggest factor is you'll be able to switch between worlds, sort of Link to the Past style, to explore the land of the living and the land of the dead. And on top of that, there's a twist to the Souls-like formula, because when you die, you don't return to the last checkpoint. Instead, you will rise again in the land of the dead with one final shot to get back by defeating the opponents around you. Now, as gameplay innovations in the Souls-like formula go, that's actually kind of compelling one. We just need to see, of course, how the genre fans actually find the gameplay to be when it launches on the 13th. Okay, Forza Motorsport. Yes, this is Xbox's other major release for the autumn. The sim racer from Turn 10 Studios is up on the 10th of October, and while you might not be interested in racing sims, there are a few interesting moves from this Xbox-owned brand. You'll notice there's no number there, or even a subtitle, and that's because Turn 10 seems to be taking this as the starting point for a sort of game platform. As much as that might be a little bit spooky, right? The idea, oh dear, this is a platform, so it won't be a full game. They have basically said, no, this is a full AAA release, you don't need to worry. The thing is, it will be fully supported onward. We will just have to see how that goes. Sonic Superstars, then, is Sega trying to get back to the 2D roots of Sonic again. And it's a co-development between Team Sonic and the developers of Fantasian and Balan Wonderworld. Yeah, remember Balan Wonderworld? This is another iteration, though, of the Gotta Go Fast formula that is being adapted slightly. It's got 4-player local gameplay to basically match the new Super Mario Bros. Games, and they've had the decision to build this game, while it is 2D, in a 3D environment, which will allow for breaks in the side-scrolling gameplay to basically spice it up with some variety. Add to that, then, some Mario-style pick-up power-ups via Chaos Emeralds, and I suppose we could actually have something that's kind of interesting. It comes out on the 17th of October, which does mean that it's got a head start on its mustachioed competition that will be coming out later this year. Okay, much less fast, but equally horrifying, the 17th of October is Season 2 of Diablo 4. Yes, the Season of Blood with its whole vampire theme to, I guess, match the Halloween scheduling. The Powers of Blood will basically be giving people new things that will allow for new builds, and we'll just have to see how many people are willing to give Blizzard another chance on that one. Now, if you still want a dose of hell, on the 18th, we've got a new Hellboy game that's coming out. It's an action brawler roguelike game that seems to be deeply reverent of the German expressionistic style and tone of the Hellboy comics. And it certainly helps that And it certainly helps that the creator, Mike Mignola, is actually on board to write the narrative. And yeah, this is like a canonical Hellboy tale. So if Upstream Arcade can actually pull the game bit off, this could be a real treat for fans of Hellboy. For everyone else then, this could be a fun third-person action game with some interesting combat options. But again, we do need to wait to see if that's enough to justify, like multiple roguelite replays. And for this game, there is a bit of a special final note, and that is that Lance Reddick provided the voice of Hellboy for this game before his passing in March. So this, it's one of the last projects that Lance actually worked on. To move on, we have a project that could be quite special. It's called World of Horror, and it releases from early access on the 19th on Steam with a full release on console as well. And I've got to say, this is one of the most visually striking horror games of recent years. It's a one-bit horror RPG from a solo dev. Visually, it is all Junji Ito horror manga inspired, which yes, is perfectly horrific. The broader plot delves into the eldritch themes of Lovecraft, and the early access version of this game has a 94% positive rating on Steam. So as Halloween approaches, I do think that World of Horror may be the perfect game to, curl up with and get unsettled by. On the 20th, then, we've got the game that everybody's aware of this month, Spider-Man 2, the sequel to Spider-Man that should, I suppose, sport more technical bells and whistles than Miles Morales, because they have had a bit more time on the PS5 to just get as much as they can out of it. It'll certainly be interesting to see how far they are pushing things, as this is a very true next-gen game. And obviously for Sony, this is major. Insomniac are one of the absolute anchor studios of the PlayStation brand. And per statements from the devs, this is a game that actually will be broadly a similar length to the original game, but it will have twice the map size. And they're basically going for quality of experience over quantity of experience in their approach. It's got a darker story, this time with the addition of Kraven the Hunter and Venom as villains. And hey, look, if you're saying to me that it's all about quality over quantity, I'm totally down for that. I thought the Spider-Man games were pretty damn great. Sometimes it's nice to see something that is just absurdly polished. I suppose you pair all this with, the development of even more tech, and I suppose with a performance ray tracing mode, it'll probably be pretty damn nice to look at. And you can probably expect that within a year or so, it may even be on PC, which will not be the case for the next game, which is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Yes, we are, of course, losing Charles as the voice of, the voice of Mario, but we are now getting a new 2D Mario game that has decided to have a distinctive art style rather than the more plain new Super Mario Bros. Games from the Wii U era. And of course, explaining why you might want to try playing a 2D Mario game does seem a little bit reductive. Basically, it is consistently some of the best design in video games. Wonder seems like it'll be even more of that with some interesting new power-ups to enjoy, and of course, it's another Mario game. It will inspire all sorts of new weird fan art that we can enjoy on our social medias. But it does seem like this is a game that's trying some new things. It's got new options around level selection and different options for younger audiences as well. And to be honest, it's one of those things where, you see, when it comes to just the very bread and butter basics of amazing level design, amazing game design, you can't knock Nintendo. They are pretty damn consistent in how great they are with these games. Now, a game that we will be seeing on PC and surprisingly on console in a few months is City Skylines II. This is what I'm really excited about. It's coming out on the 24th. Of course, this is the sequel to the city builder that basically took up the mantle of that genre after the fall of SimCity. It got, years of mods, years of DLC. Now the sequel is here, very much trying to rise to the challenge of those expectations. And it really is an impressive game in terms of scope. There are full overhauls in a systemic level that are underpinning, just massive changes to things like the minutiae of traffic. And you might think, oh, that's some small nerd thing. No, see, in a game like this, managing the traffic of your city, it is actually an entire other game in and of itself. So traffic, big increases, power, waste management systems. This very much is the start of another, decade-long game that will get lots of DLC, lots of additions, and of course also lots of mods. The community around these games is absolutely humongous, and they've really been doing a masterful marketing campaign by allowing a lot of the city-building gamers on YouTube to have access to builds. We're actually seeing Let's Plays, build-alongs, all of that stuff happening already. I can't wait. I'm very excited. And on the same day, we've got The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. Yeah, thing is though, it's an Epic Games Store exclusive, which probably means you won't hear too much about it. I've done a video before, the black hole of video games. That's very much what the Epic Store is. Unless you're able to bring a massive audience there with you, it is hard to get anywhere on that store. So that's a little bit of a shame, but it could mean that by the time it does make it onto Steam and broader releases, this will be a significantly more polished game, which could be good for games like, say, Hades. That worked out stupendously well. Of course, in this game, you'll be playing as dwarves summoned to Moria in order to reclaim the lost mines of Khazad-dûm. It's basically a survival game version of Deep Rock Galactic, delving deep in order to get resources, to build bases, to build new tools. I actually think this is an example of how you can handle a licensed property in a fairly smart way. I mean, you can see an existing design, IP, the big commonality of dwarves. It does feel like a fairly natural thing that could be a pretty damn good game. Now, still on the 24th, we get to find out just how much Konami want to win their audiences back because Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 comes out. Now, this is less remaster or remake than it is a sort of definitive edition based on the previews. Basically, it's the original Nintendo Entertainment System games, the Metal Gear Solid Remaster, and then the Blue Point builds of Metal Gear 2 and 3, all included alongside a bunch of additional content like the VR missions, graphic novels, and more, which overall is great. I mean, these are absolutely seminal games. Some of the things that Kojima was trying to do way back then, like, pretty damn impressive. Of course, though, it's Konami. They have the problem that they mishandle a lot and nobody likes them, which, is a bit rough. And it certainly is a light touch affair because these will be 1080-60 as their target rather than, maybe upscaling to 4K or anything like that. And of course, this is happening in the same year that Capcom went and did Resident Evil 4 Remake and that Electronic Arts did Dead Space Remake. And that does mean that audience expectations are pretty damn high. And what this is more of a sort of GOG-style game re-release. Now, a brief aside to highlight a different kind of port, and that is Dave the Diver, which is out on the Nintendo Switch. This is one of the surprise hits of 2023. It's on Switch. I think it's a really good game for that platform too. Next then, Ghostrunner II, coming out on the 26th. It's, the follow-up to the surprisingly well-received hit from 2020. It's a single-player cyberpunk ninja slasher that had amazingly fun first-person platforming, which is a hard thing to do right, and a challenging, really deep, fun combat system. This is a quick follow-up, just taking all of that, deepening it, developing it, giving us more content. There are more abilities, you have more control and movement and attacks, there's more of the world, more enemy variety. This just feels like a very welcome game for fans of the original, and if you haven't checked out the original, I'm sure you can get it on the cheap. And then just in time for Halloween, on the 27th, we have got Alan Wake 2. Yep, 13 years after the original game released, and of course being kept alive by the Alan Wake DLC for Control, we are seeing the return to the cult classic survival horror game. It bridges the gap between early 2000s Remedy and the fans who are brought in by Control, basically. This time around, we'll have another set of dual protagonists, with FBI Saga Anderson investigating Bright Falls, the setting of the first game, while writer Alan Wake approaches the plot from inside the psychological dream setting that he's been trapped in since the end of the last game, which is probably insane. And they have, Remedy of course, an unparalleled sense of tone and mood for their games, really strong visual design. I cannot wait to see how they pull this one off, especially Alan's, funky situation that he's currently stuck in. The final few days of October bring us a digestive for the month, though. Don't nod, they have spent a lot of 2023 trying to distinguish themselves from their indie narrative adventure game past, right? Where they were doing games like Life is Strange. So, Jusant, coming in on the 31st, might be the biggest departure in that vein. It's a platformer in the truest sense, a game about climbing and overcoming obstacles, uncovering the history of the tower that you're climbing. So that's what they've been up to. It's just you, a set of physics-based ropes and pittons, and a huge coastal tower to climb in a meditative adventure. The sandy setting, the solo sojourn, and small scope are drawing almost journey-like comparisons, so it will be interesting to see if they can kind of engage their usual audience when, well, the player's going to be focused on something pretty different to what they've been used to with a Don't Nod game. And that's actually it for October. It is, an absolutely insane month for games. I mean, even in today's list of games that I would want to personally play, there's like over 5. How could I possibly play all of these games, especially considering I already have a backlog from every other month this year? The industry is pumping out so much goddamn content that, look, I know games can feel quite doomer sometimes, but the second you look outside those big high-profile fails, you actually see so much incredible content. So that's it for today's video. Let me know what games you're excited by, and with that said, I'll see you next time.